Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I'd like to present to you guys another what if video in Wings of Fire. What if Asha survived? This video was suggested to me by Virtual Clicks Roblox, Bunny Gamer, and Third Eyed Lenny, so thank you so much to them for suggesting this. I fell in love with this idea as soon as I saw it, and I knew it would make for a great what if video. This contains spoilers for the Dragonet Prophecy, so if you haven't finished book 1, then I'd recommend clicking off. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the video. In the Dragonet Prophecy, Clay's dreams of having a family that missed him were ultimately shattered when he found out his mother sold him to the Talons of Peace for a few cows. His aunt, Asha, had dreamed of what would happen with the prophecy, and became overjoyed when her sister, Cattail, had a blood-red egg at the time of the prophecy. Unfortunately, she was killed in the crossfire of Blister and Blaze's army after successfully delivering Clay's egg to the Talons of Peace. However, what if things went differently? What if Asha survived? Asha couldn't explain the joy she felt when Cattail told her she had a blood-red egg. It was one of the prophecy dragonets. It just had to be. It was an understatement to say that Asha loved the prophecy. The idea of the war ending with a peaceful solution was something that seemed perfect. The bloodshed would finally be over, and her own nephew was going to be a part of that destiny. She couldn't even believe that the same prophecy she talked about for years was finally coming true, and her own relative was going to be a part of it. After many weeks of begging her sister, Cattail, to give up the egg to the Talons of Peace, she obliged, the prospect of a meal seeming enticing enough for her. Cattail never cared much for prophecies anyways, and frankly thought her sister was obsessed with something that probably wasn't even going to come true. As for Asha, having the honor of carrying her sister's egg to the Talons of Peace was something that made her hopeful for the future. The Dragonets really were coming, and she was going to help them shape their destiny. The flight to the Sky Kingdom was more difficult than Asha had prepared for, mainly due to the battle raging on the path she was going to take. Plus, it was going to be nearly impossible to find the cave she was supposed to leave the egg at, because it was supposed to be hard to find. The Talons had only given her some loose instructions that she was supposed to follow, but she had to burn them the second she had them memorized. Something about keeping the location safe. Directions were confusing, especially in places she had never been to before. Asha couldn't understand why anybody wouldn't want to live in the fresh, relaxing mud that she found in her village. Nevertheless, she trudged on, making sure to keep her nephew's egg tucked nicely in the crook of her wing. She was determined to keep him safe. After all, he was going to be a part of the real Dragonet prophecy. The one thing keeping dragons hopeful during the war. The battle ahead of her waged on, corpses falling from the sky. Seeing such a horrific sight would have made anybody wish for this war to be over. Sneaking through the trees and avoiding the bursts of flame around her, Asha was able to successfully sneak past whatever battle was happening. It broke her heart to see so many dead dragons, but the egg she held in her talons was going to stop all this bloodshed from happening. The war was mere years from being finished, though she felt like she couldn't wait that long. Asha was one of the only dragons in the village who remembered life before the war. Dragons were able to walk around freely without the risk of being killed as a traitor, but things had changed. Thankfully, things were finally looking like they would end soon. After all, Asha had faith in the prophecy like no other dragon could. "You're Asha, right?" a small voice abruptly said, cutting off Asha's thoughts. She turned around, meeting face to face with a mopey-looking Seawing. She nodded, looking down at his figure. He was quite thin for a Seawing, his face fairly gaunt. He looked sadder than any dragon she had seen in the village, except for Morass, a bright and friendly Mudwing villager who soon became sullen and withdrawn after losing her son in the war. "This is why you're doing this, Asha," she reassured herself. "To stop dragons from dying and to help things finally change. I think everyone here is willing for this war to end." "You must be Webbs, I'd assume," she asked. Webbs nodded in response, looking down at the egg in her talons. It was shiny and the exact same color as dragon's blood, clearly holding the Mudwing Dragonet from the prophecy inside. He was due to hatch on the brightest night, and he just had to! No other blood-red egg's been born in the hatchery for a few years, meaning he really was the one. Asha took a deep breath in, finally putting the egg on Webbs' claws. He looked down at it, holding it like it was fragile glass that could break with a single touch of a talon. Asha felt the same way about it and smiled at the thought of another dragon, finally taking the prophecy seriously. "He'll be in good hands." "I know," she replied, beaming. There was a part of Asha that wished to stay with her nephew. She hadn't even met him, but she could tell that he was going to be the greatest little dragonet to ever walk on the face of Pyra. Images flooded through her mind of him playing in the mud with her, and Asha teaching him the way of the Mudwings. After all, the Talons members that were supposed to watch over the Dragonets didn't contain any Mudwings. I can tell by the look on your face that you're having second thoughts, Webb said. Asha hesitated momentarily. Was she? I want him to end the prophecy. Trust me, I've been talking about it for ages. The war is finally almost over, and I'm so proud that my nephew is going to help end it. But there's a part of me that wants to be there. I feel like I'm letting him down, you know? Webbs, looking down at the egg, nodded. I can understand that. But we really need this egg. He's definitely the one for the prophecy. I've never had Dragonets, so I can't really say that I know what you're going through, but... A look of pity was shown on Webbs' face. The other eggs were taken without him having to see their guardian's reaction, but this? This Dragonet's aunt was staring him in the eyes, willing to give him up for the prophecy. There had to be something he could do. An idea suddenly hit him, one he knew that he would regret when standing face to face with Kestrel afterwards. There's always a possibility that you could be one of the guardians. Seeing her look of excitement caused him to reply quickly. I can't promise anything, but, we could also allow you to supervise the Dragonets. Oh man, Kestrel's going to kill me. A random mudwing who's uninvolved with the Talons of Peace will help raise the Dragonets of Destiny? Doesn't seem like something she'll like. Or Dune, for that matter, Webbs thought to himself. Asha eagerly nodded, the happiness shown clearly on her face. This opportunity is staring you right in the face, Asha! Say yes! Of course, I would love to. I never really thought of that being a possibility, but it would be such an honor. Why did you even say this, Webbs? He thought, nearly face-palming. Yeah, sure. I'll have to let Kestrel and Dune know that we're having another guardian. I'm not really in a place of power to do this, but... Webbs droned on about how this wasn't a promise, but Asha was too distracted by the idea of raising her nephew as a prophecy dragon. This really is it, she thought. Asha, you're about to help your nephew save the entire world. No matter what happens, I'll always be there for him. I'll raise him the Mudwing way, that's what I'll do. I know Cattail doesn't care much for the prophecy, but I'll send her updates all the time. Taking a deep breath in, Asha looked up at the blue sky above her. This is your chance to be part of a destiny greater than yourself. You've got this, Asha. Turns out, raising Dragonets was a lot harder than it looked. Now, she felt bad for all the time she scolded other Mudwings for their tradition of not raising their own Dragonets. Prophecy or no prophecy, raising Dragonets was a wild ride, to say the least. But Asha loved every moment she spent with Clay, her nephew. The day he hatched was momentous, and seeing his sweet little head pop out of his egg melted her heart. Ever since then, Asha made it her duty to have Clay live like a regular Mudwing would, even if he did it in a cave with no actual mud. Though she had begged Kestrel with her famous puppy dog eyes to let her take Clay to the swamp for at least one day. Spoiler alert! Ended with a tail to the face and an angry red Skywing stomping away. Turns out that asking nicely doesn't work for every dragon. Dune was alright, and he seemed to care for Sunny at least. Webbs was a disaster of a dragon sometimes, but deep down she was eternally grateful for him allowing her to raise Clay, even if he meant he got into a good yelling match with Kestrel afterwards. Despite the chaotic environment of the cave, spending time with Clay was everything Asha could have asked for. Sure enough, he had a heart of gold and would do anything to protect his friends. Though he wasn't as prophecy crazy as she was, he did realize his importance to saving the world. Asha particularly liked Sunny, especially because of her love for Destiny. Okay, Asha did have to admit that she may not have had a big factor in Sunny's love for the prophecy, but then again, she seemed like the kind of dragon who would have been obsessed with Destiny regardless. Even though Clay wouldn't grow up like a regular Mudwing and got no swamp time, Asha made sure to teach him all about their traditions. Once the war is over, we'll live with Cattail and your other siblings in the Mud Kingdom. The idea of being with his family always excited Clay, and he loved every bit of Asha. She was warm and friendly, basically the perfect version of an aunt that any dragon could ask for. Her hugs were always genuine, and her smiles made any dragon feel warm inside. Her laughs put everyone in a good mood, as well as even just her presence. Asha taught the Dragonets about the other tribes, as well as the prophecy as a whole. Destiny was already written, just waiting to come true when they came of age. But then came the tricky part. When will the war end? It had to happen soon. The Dragonets were already getting older and beginning to grow. But the prophecy was never specific, and the battles had apparently been getting more and more violent as time went on. Every dragon was getting tired of just endless fighting and yearned deep down for it to stop. Whenever she asked Kestrel or one of the others about it, they always said the same thing. We'll send them out when they're ready. When was ready? Asha felt like they had it in them to stop the war now, or at least very soon. Tsunami had the fight in her to lead them into battle if need be. Glory was able to help defend her friends. Starflight was the brain power, Sunny was the optimist, and Clay was the heart. They seemed like a fairly good team, even from hatching. So how much longer did they need? Sighing, Asha laid her head in her talons. She wanted peace now, not in another 10 years. The war had been going on for too long, and rumor had it that a big attack was planned on the Mudwings soon. She barely got to hear any status updates from the Talons of Peace, so she felt like she was missing out on what was happening outside the cave. Asha felt as trapped as the Dragonets did. She listened to their complaining about wanting to see the real world often, and wished she could be the one to let them out. The other guardians said they had a plan, so she waited. And waited. And waited some more. The days just dragged on endlessly, and so did the war. But then there was the night that Clay took Asha aside. "Aunt Asha, we've been wanting to leave the cave for ages. Tsunami says we're ready to see the real world. We need to go out there and see how things are before we can end the war, right?" Ugh, she could never say no to the pleading look on his face. "I'm sorry, Clay. I want you guys to go out there as much as you do. But Kestrel, Webbs, and Dune say that you need to wait. I'm not really the one to let you guys out. I'm sorry." Webbs's words flashed in her mind from all those years ago. "I'm not really the one to do this, but..." And yet, despite his status in the Talons, he was able to bend some strings and allow her to be one of the Dragonet Guardians. If he managed that, maybe she could let them go, at least for a little bit. They would be back by sunrise the next day. She would guarantee it. Just one trip outside, and that was all. Ash would bring them right back inside the cave before the other Guardians noticed they were gone. Sighing, she raised her drooping head. "All right, Clay, you know I could never say no to you and your friends. One trip outside, that's all I'll be able to get away with. You'll have to stay by my side at all times, got it? And don't tell the other Guardians, please." Clay's face lit up with excitement, and he nodded. He raced off to get the other Dragonets, and soon enough they were anxiously awaiting their brief trip outside. Kestrel, Webbs, and Dune were supposedly talking to a visitor, so now was the perfect chance. It was just one trip outside, and they'd be back in the cave before they knew it. Right? Just like raising Dragonets is hard, keeping them by your side when you're outdoors is even harder. Asha hated reprimanding them, but they kept wandering off and wanting to explore by themselves. Asha was no smoke breather. She knew how dangerous the world really could be. The key to ending the war was right behind her, and she needed to keep them safe. However, she began to regret taking them out almost immediately. Because when she looked up to tell them they had to head back inside, Tsunami and Clay were missing. Just great. "Did you see where they went?" she asked Starflight, Sunny, and Glory, but they shook their heads. "This is bad," Asha muttered, looking around frantically. Surely they couldn't have gone far. Alright. You three stay here, and I'll find Tsunami and Clay. Actually, scratch that. Head back to the cave and wait beside the entry boulder. Once I round them up, we'll go back inside. We've already been out for too long anyways. It's getting dark." Starflight, Sunny, and Glory muttered their complaints, but trudged back towards the cave. Meanwhile, Asha, in her panic, shot up into the air to get the higher ground. Where are they? Her eyes darted towards the river, and then she saw it. Tsunami and Clay, face to face with Queen Scarlet, by far the most dangerous queen of their age. They didn't know her by appearance, only by her dark history. Her nephew and Tsunami were in danger. There's no way they knew who they were messing with. "Clay! Tsunami!" Asha yelled, her wings beginning to get pelted by the abrupt rainfall. "Get back to the cave!" The two of them looked at her, confused, and Queen Scarlet tried to make a move. She ran over to Tsunami, arms outstretched and claws ready, and Asha shrieked. She immediately flew down onto the two of them, using the few fighting strategies she had memorized to get Scarlet off of Tsunami's back. Clay watched in horror, trying to untangle the three dragons from each other. Tsunami finally managed to swipe at Scarlet's face, causing her to tumble backwards. Breathing heavily, Asha tried scooping up Clay in her arms, though she knew he was too big. "Get back to the cave, both of you! I'll hold her off, at least for now." Scarlet turned back, fury in her eyes. "Nobody touches me and gets away with it, Mudwing!" Smoke billowed out of her nostrils, and she charged towards Asha, digging her claws into every part of her that she could reach. Asha yelped and tried pulling herself away. "They have to be far enough by now. If I can lure Scarlet away, maybe I can still make it to the cave without her seeing us." That in mind, Asha raced through the thick canopy of trees, trying to lose Scarlet at all costs. She ran until she couldn't hear the thrashing of leaves anymore, and stopped to catch her breath. She almost jeopardized everything the Talons of Peace had worked for all these years, and the one source of hope in Pyra. She raced back towards the entry boulder, counting all of the Dragonets. Sunny, Starflight, and Glory looked confused and in shock. Meanwhile, Tsunami was angrily shouting about the whole incident. Clay looked up at his aunt with tears, carefully assessing her minor injuries. "I'll be all right," she replied, trying to stop his worrying. But inside, Asha was far from all right. "I almost ruined the prophecy before it could even happen, all because I couldn't say no to my own nephew. This is all my fault. I don't deserve this position as a guardian of the Dragonets." Tears filled her eyes, Asha hating every decision she had ever made up to that point. Dragonets of Destiny almost died. Her own nephew almost just died. And it was her fault. Without saying a word, she carefully moved the entrance boulder away and shuffled them into the cave. Everybody was silent now, waiting whatever lecture was bound to come next. But to their surprise, they didn't get anything in return. Instead, Asha curled up near a stalactite and began silently sobbing. Clay noticed this and walked over to her cautiously. He put a claw on his aunt's shoulder, trying to reassure her that they were all okay. Before Asha could respond, she heard wing beats from outside the entrance. There were about 10 of them, all beating furiously against the wind of the storm. Claws scratched at the boulder, and an unmistakable voice was heard behind it. "No, you idiots! Let me do it! I saw her open it!" Queen Scarlet and a whole troop of Skywings stormed into the cave, grabbing each of the Dragonets. "No, stop, please!" Asha sobbed. "Take me instead! It was my fault that they were seen. I wasn't supposed to take them out there. Just please!" Webbs, Kestrel, and Dune stepped out of one of the rooms and gazed in horror at the sight around them. Tsunami, though trying to fight her way to Queen Scarlet, managed to get pinned to the ground and shackled. Tears were flowing freely down Asha's face as she watched the famous Dragonets from the prophecy get manhandled like they were items. Before she could do anything, Queen Scarlet glared down at her. "I think we should reward this muttering right here for bringing us to the famed Dragonets of Destiny." "No, no, please!" "And what better reward is there than the sweet release of death?" Scarlet teased, stepping closer and closer to Asha. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she managed one final response. "Scarlet, you're not a Dragon of Mercy, but please listen to me. The Dragonets have done nothing wrong. If you keep them prisoner, promise me that you won't mistreat them." Queen Scarlet, however, merely responded with a yawn of boredom. "Oh, how stupid you must be!" And with the raising of her claw, Scarlet sliced into Asha's heart. In her final moment, she managed to look at Clay one last time. He desperately screamed her name, trying to get away from the guards long enough so that he could hold her hand one final time. As the world around her grew darker, Asha thought of the cruel irony of her upper chest wound. Her heart, the one thing keeping other dragons alive, was the thing that got her killed. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. This was genuinely a challenging what if video to write, but I had a lot more fun with it as the story progressed. Once again, thank you to Virtual Clicks, Roblox, Bunny Gamer, and Third Eyed Lenny for suggesting this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!